Okay, here we go again. So I'm going to talk about form-based codes, but I want to just first reinforce a couple of things about really what is happening in best practice of zoning today. And it's responding to what I mentioned earlier. It's a lot of our work is actually just legalizing the neighborhoods that already exist, right? Of creating codes that recognize that 1960s subdivisions don't look like 1920s neighborhoods, right? They're not the same. Why would you have the same laws and the same rules apply to them? And this is, in fact, what causes a lot of things to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals or have to go to the planning. Like, just get the code right and written for the different kind of character that you have across your city. There's something called missing middle. I don't know if you've ever heard of this idea, but there's a whole range of what we describe as missing middle housing. So you think of the world in terms of single-family detached house and then high-rise towers, right? There's a whole bunch of different kinds of houses and housing choices between duplexes, triplexes, cottage courts, a whole number of things like this that, in fact, have become illegal in many zoning codes as well. So Nori and I are involved in helping cities actually introduce new housing types that accommodate growth but are house scale, right? Yeah, they're more dense, they have more density, they have more units, but they don't change the character of the neighborhood. They really are house scale in their thinking. Another piece I mentioned earlier is the idea of sprawl or the problem of small sprawl development in many cities. And so a lot of our work is also focused on how do you retrofit sprawling areas. So a dead shopping center or a vacant 7-Eleven on a commercial street over time could actually become a place, a walkable main street. It's not high density. In fact, it looks a lot more like the original Main Street of Golden. It looks a lot more like what you imagine a Norman Rockwell painting of Main Street would be. So form-based codes play a pretty significant role in this conversation in two ways. In terms of the clarity that form-based codes provide, and in terms of getting better design outcomes. And Nori's going to speak a little bit more of that. I mentioned to you earlier that conventional zoning really focuses on use, less on form, and form-based codes really try to bring a stronger balance toward the form and character. So what I'm talking about is legal clarity. I don't know, is that kind of an oxymoron? I don't know. Right? So you know what you're supposed to do. Like, this is the law, right? You know how fast you can drive. Right? Like what, 35 miles, 37 miles? I don't know. It's 30 miles an hour, right? But if you saw a sign that said this, what would you do, right? And in fact, if you've ever read a zoning code, it sometimes feels like this, right? Bridge out, open to local traffic only, right? So what we're talking about, right, is that in codes, because there's a lot of words, and they are the law, they tend to be very legalese in their nature, right? But the scary part of this is they're the instructions that architects are supposed to be using to design buildings from. And if you know any architects don't think in terms of words. They think graphically. They think in terms of form and character. So one of the things about form-based codes is we use a lot of graphic images to explain the basic conditions. And the whole idea here is to create clarity, which creates predictability, which helps to streamline your permitting processes, right? But the important thing is that if you have a vision and the zoning is dialed into the vision, you get what you want faster. Who doesn't want what they want faster, right? Who wants to pay more, take more time and more delay to wait for the thing that they want, right? Nobody does. So form-based codes are about the public realm, right? In typical zoning, it doesn't care about the public realm. It's just residual space. And the idea is we shape buildings, we locate buildings. In Denver, we use form-based codes along Colfax Avenue, putting the building in the right place, up to the street, define the street corner, have ground story activation, things that animate and bring it to a human scale, have the right kind of transitions to adjacent neighborhoods, and have a mix of uses. This is what makes an interesting Main Street. This is what makes an interesting place that people want to be. And so there has been new development on Colfax where there used to be big parking lots and buildings set back that have become walkable. Buildings come closer to the street, windows and entrances, outdoor seating, a whole number of things that were illegal to do under the old zoning code. In Milwaukee, we did a form-based code for a whole new riverfront neighborhood. And there's a whole range of housing types, from row houses to single-family houses to apartment buildings along the Milwaukee River that created a really wonderful new neighborhood. If you're interested in form-based codes, there's a book by one of our colleagues, Dan Perolick, and a few others called Form-Based Codes. So this is pretty clear about what the topic is, right? I also am on the board of the Form-Based Code Institute, and you can look us up on the internet too. A number of resources there. Thank you.